Good morning, channel friends. Hello, welcome back. We are sitting on a bench because behind me, we have a beautiful wisteria. The wisteria bloom is perfect this year. It rained before, and a nice burst of heat has arrived, and a wonderful wisteria has emerged. And so she inspired me and suggested me to create a wisteria. Why did you suggest it to me? Tell me a bit more.
Because painting wisteria is indeed enjoyable and not too difficult at all actually, but there are some tips to follow because the tendency is to make small mistakes that prevent it from looking like real wisteria.
We don't want bunches of grapes on the row, we want a wisteria. So take a good look at it, because you will see it painted on a wall in a while. Let's start. The garden that has this ugly fire door. Basically, this is a boiler room I had to build specially, and I had to install this door to comply with the law. And over there, there's a grate I had to put in.
And this is the right place to paint a wisteria. It will make it more pleasant and graceful, it will look better in the context, and it picks up the wisteria behind it. Have you already studied it? Tell me. Let's just say one thing first. This wall has been painted with dark sand magic wall. One coat on concrete. There was raw concrete here. And this was an iron door also painted with wall, because I am used to being in contact with walls. So I don't have such high daily wear where washing is frequent. You know we also apply magic wall on wood paneling and wooden ceilings. So we actually use wall on many surfaces. And this wall has been done with the same color as the door during a live stream. Right, Emma? There is Emma there. We did a live stream where we show exactly how to paint the door and give it the same finish as the wall. So what? Let's start. I had this idea. Now we have it covered with a cloth, but underneath there is a tiled floor. Yes, there is a floor made of stone. Yes, stone. So it wouldn't be very realistic to have the trunk start directly from the ground. So we will draw a pot that will hold the wisteria plant.
So there is a tutorial within the tutorial showing how she draws a vase freehand on the wall. If you want to try to reproduce what she does, you can also use the pouncing technique, which you have demonstrated in detail in at least 2 tutorials, and you also run many courses on pouncing. Or use the classic technique that Alex also uses with a nice photocopy of something you like. Turn it over, use a graphite pencil and then trace it on the surface, on the wall, on the furniture. Trace it everywhere to get the trace of the drawing on the wall or furniture. So now we start with Elle drawing a nice vase on this wall and then we move on. She will use magic wall.
I start by drawing the overall dimensions of the vase directly on the wall with a pencil. Then we will go on to paint it. I grip the pencil from the bottom so that I have a little more distance from the wall. I draw a center line that will be half of my vase. Here, I will draw a vase shaped like an amphora. I will first draw one half so that I can then reproduce the other half symmetrically. Let's make a fairly tall vase because it needs to match the size of the plant. This will be our vase, the top of the vase. And then we try, more or less symmetrically and carefully, to recreate the other half. I go down more. It is on the ground. And now I will add the 2 handles. We need this mainly as a guideline so that we can paint later. We will add details later with the brush. Let's start painting the vase. We will apply Lucky Forest as a uniform base color on the entire vase, and we will use it pure. Now I'm going to prepare a palette with vintage and Torta di Zucca to simulate the rust effect. I stir it well. Pure wool, applied by small touches. We really need very little paint. Here, I'm using Elisa's large open cans of wall paint, but at home, note it's enough to use the small 125 milliliters cans, and I assure you that you will have some left over. These are the colors I need. Now I begin to paint the vase. With a small flat brush, I begin to mark the edges of the vase. Like this. The great thing about the wall is that it slides really well on the wall. It is an excellent compromise between smoothness and the fact that the color does not drip. The brush slides really well even with pure paint, and this is indeed a characteristic that not all types of paint have, especially when used pure. As I was saying before, the pencil outline is a reference, but remember that if you want to slightly modify the shape, you can do so because the wall paint covers the pencil outline perfectly. Then a wider brush, 30 oval, and I go to fill the entire vase. When applying the brush strokes, I already start to follow the shape of the vase a bit. This will definitely help me later when I have to add the lights and shadows to already have a better shape. So this is a tip I can give you for vases, and in general for slightly rounded shapes. If brushed this way instead of that way, you will definitely find it easier later when you add the lights and shadows. As you can see, it covers perfectly. One coat of paint will be enough for the vase. The closer we get to the belly of the vase, the more we make a curved brush stroke. In this case, we have a rough wall, so occasionally you will see that there are small gaps. I don't mind them because, since the vase will have to look old anyway, it works good. If you work on a smooth wall, you won't get this effect, but you can eventually recreate it by sanding a little at the end. Now I am painting the handle. I have already done the other one, always with pure paint. I will first do the front part, and then I will also add the part behind. Right now, it's not very visible, but when we add the shadows and highlights, you'll definitely see the shape of this handle better. We finished the top of the vase. Let's make it rounded. Here too, make sure to carefully follow the shape of the vase with your brush strokes. Here we give just a hint of the back, as we will later cover it with the trunk, but we slightly paint it. The paint is not dry yet, so I take the chance to add a few more shades. On my palette, I've put some Nuit Parisienne and cotton. I use them pure to create lights and shadows. I take some Lucky Forest from my palette, which is my base color, and add a bit of black. This will be used to create the shadows. So there will be a shadow here, which is the part under the top of the vase, along the entire edge. Then, still with a flat brush, As I mentioned earlier, we follow the movement of the vase and create some fraying to make the left side slightly shaded. As you can see, I need very little color. Let's fill in this whole part. It's not necessary for the shades to be very pronounced. When working on a wall, it is always better to do 2 steps and gently than to do one very pronounced straight away. I go over the edge, always darkening the left side like this, and always with the dark I outline the bottom part. So the shaded part of the handle on this side too. On this side there will be light and the back part too. So we work on the lower part of the front of the handle like this. I lighten the lucky forest a bit more with the cotton. I always brush this way, but I also cross the brush stroke like this, so that this horizontal mark is less visible. By also making vertical strokes, we mask them a little bit. I do this that way all the way to the bottom, always on the right side, and I start by adding the light on the upper part, coming into contact with the dark that we had done previously, like this, and from this side, on the upper part and on the inner part this time. I move to the upper part of the edge, like this, and then I will wait for the color to dry. Because once the color is dry, I will be able to add a few more touches of extreme light. But the paint needs to be dry, otherwise it will keep mixing. The lights and shadows on the vase are finished. Now let's add the rust effect. So, as I was saying, I use Torta Zucca and vintage on my palette. I use a flat-tipped brush, which isn't fat anymore. It's very worn out, but you should never throw away old brushes. Let's combine the 2 colors a little bit more, a bit, like this, and by gently dabbing we create this rust effect. We go and do it here and there. In this case we don't look at where the lights and shadows were, because as we know rust is quite random, so we do it in some spots. Let's take a bit more orange and intensify some parts of the painting. You can also, with your finger, while the color is still wet, slightly move it around like this and blend it a bit, just like this. Like this. If you then see that you added too much orange, you can take the green again and always mix them a bit further to achieve the desired shade, ensuring the colors blend perfectly. We always dab with the finger. I do a little more maybe on the handle, randomly. Don't replicate on the left what you did on the right, because it wouldn't be too realistic. This way, we continue to dab a bit of brown and a bit of Torta Zucca, dabbing with your finger, just as if it were a brush. Now I am adding the final touches of rust. Then we'll start painting the wisteria. Let's move on to the trunk of the wisteria. We have some pure vintage, a 30 oval brush. With this, we will outline the shape of the trunk. It doesn't have to be a defined line. since the trunk of the wisteria is twisted and we can always modify it later with lights and shadows. At home, if you feel more confident, first trace the outline with a pencil and then proceed with the brush. That way, and I am going to mark it. I paint on the door too, because we definitely need to mask it, like this. The trunk will gradually become slightly larger, and we will define it well with a few touches of light by adding white and a few touches of shadow using Nuit Parisienne. We also rotate the brush so that the trunk becomes a little more irregular. We add some touches of light and shadow, adding cotton and vintage to the palette. I take some black and some white, and I rotate the brush just a bit like this, to carefully simulate the roughness of the wisteria trunk. A bit of brown. We are going to alternate black, brown and white. While you are working, have fun, relax. This is something you must absolutely relax and enjoy. I put a bit of Olivia in the bowl, diluted it about 100%, took a molly sponge, tore it into pieces, dipped it, squeezed it, and now I am going to do a light dabbing on the wall where we will be painting leaves. This will help us ensure that our drawing fills up without having to do it leaf by leaf. I'll show you how. I do a light sponging that also goes over the trunk. This needs to be a very light shade. We just need it so we don't start with an empty wall. Then we will add the leaves afterwards. I started painting the leaves. In this case, we are always working with a palette, Olivia, vintage and cotton. I work with a palette because this way I can create many shades. I recommend using Olivia and not Lucky Forest, which we have already used before for the vase, because one of the most common mistakes when painting wisteria is making these leaves very dark. Actually, I have seen some works where the composition was quite pleasant, but these dark green leaves somewhat ruined it. So, remember that the wisteria leaf is a slightly greyish green. By using these colours, you can be sure that the work will turn out perfect. As I previously mentioned, I work with a palette and use a thin, round-tipped brush. I don't draw each leaf individually. Instead, I simply do this, First I paint the main stem. Then I lean the brush on the wall, press it down and let go, creating a fairly linear but drooping leaf. If I were to draw leaf by leaf, it would certainly become too stiff. In this way, I have a smoother movement. I use the palette to create shades while the leaf is still wet. This will allow you to achieve a more realistic effect. We start by making the leaves and then move on to adding the flowers. I'll reveal a trick to make it even more realistic. When you paint the wisteria leaves, remember that the bloom is not the same everywhere, so we will have some open leaves, but some others will be curled up on themselves. So, you should do this, make the leaf hang down as if it were upside down. So there is the branch, but you have the leaf coming down. Don't make it open in this direction, make it so that it falls downwards, as if gravity is pulling it down. Using a palette, I create many shades while actually using little color. This will certainly provide your wisteria with a more realistic look. I have already painted a good amount of leaves. There will certainly not be enough, but right now I need to paint the flowers and then overlap some leaves. I put Serendipity, Amour Violet, Profumo Deorient and Cotton on the palette. I am going to work on the palettes to mix the colors well and always have many shades. A little trick is to mix the two different types of purple with a tiny bit of yellow to slightly grey up the purple. Otherwise, you end up with grape clusters, and the wisteria is definitely not like a bunch of grapes. Another trick, and now I will show you how to do it, is not to draw the shape of a grape bunch, a triangular shape that comes down, but the wisteria has more of a cylinder shape that gradually tapers down. So we take a brush with a round tip. We get a little bit of Amour Violet and a little bit of white, because at the top the wisteria is lighter. Then as we go down we darken it. So I mix the colors I have on the palette and I will do this. We need to do a movement like this one at the top. Rotate the brush gently and make some small circles. In this way, by using the palette to create various shades, you can clearly see the purple gradually becoming a bit darker as I go down. I only do this meticulous work on the initial part of the cluster because, as I mentioned earlier, it will naturally get darker as it goes down. Once this detailed shading is done, I take a fine brush and some Olivia, which is the color we have already used to do the leaves before. So I take it and create some sort of appendix, like this, some fine little branches to the cluster. Like this, if it's fragmented it doesn't matter. You'll see we are going to fill it in. Then we take a smaller round tipped brush than the previous one, and with Serendipity mixed with Amour Violet, we create a darker color than the one we applied previously. We then do this work as if they were drops starting from the outside and moving towards the inside, like this. These small droplets will be the flowers that have yet to open. So, we make them cascade. We can also create some shades. You see, in this way we draw both open and closed flowers on the same cluster. This makes our drawing realistic. Let's make some smaller circles, because the lower we go, the more the flower is closed. So our circle will be smaller, like this. Here we are going to make our appendix. It doesn't need to be a very precise drawing. The important thing is that they look like small, well-defined petals. Let's add a few more here and another shade. Once this cluster is done, I take Profumo Deorient and start defining the details of the open petals, doing this. It's just as if I were to draw a small line that divides the more open petals in half. This way, each one follows a slightly different direction. I assure you that this is a small detail that will make our cluster truly realistic in the end. I am continuing to paint the wisteria clusters. I've already done quite a few. I keep doing them. Every now and then I step away. That's a piece of advice I also give to you. Every now and then step away and look where there are missing parts. Now I am going to add more. There will be others, and then I will also add some leaves above the flower, because to make it even more realistic, just like natural wisteria, it will have leaves that go over the flowers. So I will continue and add some leaves.
This makeover is finished. Today you did it by yourself.
It's pointless to say anything. Today I didn't participate, because she's a professional and has been doing these decorations for many years. I wanted to put it outside because it fits well in the garden. I just provided the wall. That's more than enough.
Alessandra provided the technique, the basics, the setting, the color mixtures, and a lot of tricks to recreate a wall like yours. Try it, and of course not necessarily on the wall, even on a piece of furniture, right? With Magic Paint and Magic Wall you can reproduce these things anywhere. But do a test first. If you don't have a wall or surface, use a large piece of cardboard.
You can always try it first, or rather you have to try it. In any case, I would advise you to try it with the wall paint. For we who have been using it for as long as we can remember, we know how it works, but I would really advise you to try using it because, as in this case, where we had different surfaces, a concrete wall, an iron fire door and plastic gutter, I had absolutely no problem applying the color and there were no differences in absorption. So this is a problem that unfortunately can arise in some cases with certain paints. The wall was already painted with a coat of Magic Wall, so wall on wall slides perfectly. Then we won't lie to you, this wall was done a fortnight ago now, because in the meantime we had a lot of wind, light against our will, and it rained for a fortnight in a row. So this is the first useful day on which we can do the closure of this beautiful video. The wall experienced everything it was supposed to experience.
Magic Wall is water repellent and amazing outdoors, better outdoors than indoors.
So be sure to test it. One more thing, something we already mentioned. If you don't have the products at home yet, you don't need to buy the big cans, just the little 125 cans. Definitely, have fun because it's worth it. Mix them and give it a try. So with a very small expense, you can really achieve a lot. I'll see you at the next makeover. At the next wall. We'll see, who knows. Goodbye.